All right, in the last lesson, we introduced the left on and right on parameters, which basically are used whenever we have columns with different names across the two data frames that we're trying to merge together. Now, sometimes you may not want to merge based on column values. Sometimes you may want to merge on something like index values. Now, that may be a case of merging based on common indexes, so take the left index, take the right index, merge them together. Or sometimes it may be a combination. You may want to match the index values in the right data frame with the column values in the left data frame. So let's take a look at two additional parameters, left index and right index, that we can utilize whenever we have situations like this. So I'll begin by re-executing our code. And I'm actually going to modify it slightly. If I take a look at my customers data frame, we can see that because we didn't pass any custom argument, we have the default pandas numeric index generated. Let's use that index call parameter right in our readCSV method to set our ID column as the index. So now we're going to have a data frame that looks a little bit different. And similarly, if I take a look at something like foods, we have a food ID column. Let's replace our default pandas numeric index with that food ID column. So I'll do index call, which is a parameter that stands for index column, accepts a string that you can use to set a column from our CSV as the index of our data frame. And this time I'm going to do food ID. And there's the first couple rows of food. And there's the first couple rows of customers. All right. Now let's merge both of these together into week one. Now this operation is going to take 2 steps, but I just want to show you that you can continue merging and repeat this process more than once. This is probably closest to what a real life data merge will look like. So let's take a look. So we begin with week 1. Let's take a look at it with the head method. And I always output at least a couple rows of the data frames that I want to merge. And that allows me to just get a visual picture of what the columns look like. So I recommend that. So now that we have an output below, I'm going to call the merge method on it. Let's begin by merging the customers that we see above here first. So I'm going to merge the customers data frame into week 1. It is going to be a left merge, so I'm basing it on the values in my week 1 data frame. Now, the left on parameter is going to stay present here, and the reason is because we want to merge on customer ID, and customer ID is a valid column in my left data frame, which is week 1. So I'm just going to do left on customer ID, and it's just going to loop through these values and look for matches in customers. However, now that the values that we want to match on are not in a column in customers, rather they are in the index, we'll have to specify a different parameter. So if they were a column, we'd be just fine with writing right on. But if it's not a column, that no longer works. So if I take a look at my options with Shift Tab, you can see that we also have these left index. It's chopped off a bit here. But we have this left index parameter and this right index parameter. And they're set to false by default. So if we replace them with true, that's basically our way of telling pandas that we do want to use those indexes for our merges. Now, left index in our case has to stay false because we're not merging based on the index in our left data frame, which is week 1. We're merging rather on customer ID. However, in our right data frame, which is customers, we do want to merge based on the index. So this right index parameter can be changed from false to true. So this way, if I write right index equals true, it's going to match the values in my customer ID column from my left data frame of week 1 with the index labels in my right data frame, which is customers. So the result will be as we expect. And here you can see that we've properly merged it. Now the big advantage here, in addition to maybe just the requirements, maybe you just have the index set up such a way and you don't want to call things like reset index and make copies, you just want something simple. In addition to whatever the requirements of the datasets are, one advantage of using indexes to merge is that those duplicate columns do not arise. So you can see we still have our customer ID column, but the index from the customer's data frame has not been brought into here. It's basically just been discarded. So we have all of the separate rows from the customer's data frame and all of the columns, but not the additional ID column that was in our index. So that's one advantage of using indexes to merge. Let's try this one more time. I'm going to store this result in sales, and I'm going to preview sales again below so we can always take a look at what it looks like. So there we have it. And now let's merge the customer, or rather the food data frame. So I'm going to delete the cell so we can see our output above. So we want to merge based on the values in the food ID column in the sales data frame and use the index from our foods data frame. So once again, I'm going to call sales.merge, the data frame that we want to merge into. The first argument is the data frame that we want to use. In that case, it's going to be foods. Then we have to specify our parameter of how we're going to merge, which is going to be left. Left on is going to be used because we have a column that we want to use as the values to match in our left data frame, which is sales. So in sales, which is what we see output here, we want to still use our food ID column, which is right here. It's a column, it's not an index, so we use left on. So I can do food ID here. And this time we don't have a column in the right-hand data frame or foods that I want to merge on. I'm not going to be merging based on food item or price. I'm going to be merging based on the index. So now again, I could specify that in my right data frame, I want to use the index, which we can do with right index equals true. And again, if this process was reversed and you wanted to use a column from the right-hand data frame and a index from the left, you would just set left index equals true, right on for the right data frame. So the process is the exact same. I think you can intuitively figure out what it is. It's just a matter of knowing that these parameters exist and are available to you. So when I execute this, we can see that now we've pulled in the proper values from the foods data frame based on the matches in the food ID column. And of course, the benefit here again is that there's no duplication. We just have that single food ID column. And let's overwrite sales again. So that'll be our final product. And that explains, or shows rather, how in just two simple steps we can combine these two data frames very quickly. Of course, here we only have 1,000 rows to merge in, or 500 rather, or even 250, I think. Yeah, 250. But surprisingly, when we're doing this on millions of rows, Pandas is just as lightning quick. So it's a very, very fast operation of merging in Pandas. Let's conclude this lesson with one more example. Let's show where we merge by indexes in both data frames. So let's take a look at week 1, our first 3 rows here, and week 2 here. So let's say that these represent the orders as they came in. So these are also time-based, for example, and these represent the 250 orders that came in week 1 and the 250 orders that came into week 2. And we want to match them up based on the order sequence, which basically means by the index. We want to see who was in first each week, who was the second person to purchase each week, and so on. So in this case, we don't want to merge based on customer ID or food ID. We want to merge based on common index, which we have in both of these data frames being a general Pandas numeric index. So what we can do is do week1.merge again. Our first argument is the data frame that we want to merge into week 1, which is going to be week 2. It's still going to be a left merge because we're basing it on the values here. And now we can't use either left on or right on because we don't want to merge by any of these columns, customer ID or food ID. We want to use the left index from week 1 and the right index from week 2. So we can do left index equals true. That'll tell Pandas to use this index right here and combine those values or match those values with the values in our right index from our week 2 data frame. So I'll set both of those parameters equal to true, and now you'll see we're going to get the result where it's going to match by those common index values 0 and 1 and 2 and so on. So we can see here that 537 and 9 are our values for row 0, 688 and 10 are our values for row 0 in week 2, and you can see that's exactly what's represented right here. Of course, if we don't want these unpleasant underscore x and underscore y, we can always use that suffixes parameter, give it a list of strings like week 1 and week 2. And now we can see who came in first each week, what the customer ID was, and what they ordered. We've merged it based on the common index instead of values in a column. So you can see Pandas is very versatile. It can do columns versus columns, columns versus index, or index versus index. You can specify any way that you want to merge these values whenever you're doing a left join from one data frame into another. You just have to be careful what parameters you use. There's a total of 5 that we can adjust here. Left index, left on, right on, and we shouldn't forget that on, which is only available if we have 2 columns with the exact same name. So 5 different options that we can play around with, 5 available parameters just in this merge method. But intuitively, I think they're all pretty similar and operate kind of logically. So you just have to know exactly what it is from each data frame that you want to pull out and then provide the right parameters that you want to use. So that's how you merge based on index positions.